The gate groaned as it swung open, slow as a waking animal. Frost clung to the metal, catching the pale morning light like shards of broken glass. And there, standing just inside the threshold, was the woman who had spent months convinced this place would kill her. Her name was Elena Marković, a former nurse, a prisoner of war, and someone who had forgotten what hope felt like. She stepped forward, then froze. Beyond the wire, she heard something she couldn't explain. Not boots, not shouting, not orders. Laughter. Soft, warm, human. And in that instant, she whispered to herself, "What kind of camp is this?" She didn't know the truth yet. When Elena first arrived at the makeshift camp in the mountains, snow swirling like ash, she thought her story had ended. She wasn't alone. 43 women nurses and civilians were herded through the entrance with numb feet and dry mouths, the bitter air stinging their cracked lips. Everything smelled of wet earth and smoke. Horses snorted in the distance. A generator coughed somewhere behind the barracks. One woman, Mira, kept whispering, "Don't look at them. Don't draw attention." The guards looked nothing like the monsters she expected, yet the fear in her stomach was enough to turn bread into stone. Every night, the wind howled through the gaps in the wooden walls, carrying with it the scraping of branches, the distant thud of boots, and the occasional metallic rattle of the gate. Sleep never came easy. Hunger pressed against the ribs from the inside. But she didn't know the truth yet. The women settle into survival. Lena watched the guards with the same mix of dread and resentment that filled all the women. Their uniforms were creased, their boots muddy, their eyes unreadable. One guard, broad-shouldered, silent, tossed them blankets on the first evening. Not gently, not cruelly, just tossed. Another guard set buckets of steaming water by the entrance. Again, not kindly, not unkindly. Everything was a contradiction. On her second night, Elena woke to the sound of soft crying. Mira clutched her stomach, trembling. "There won't be enough food," Mira whispered. Elena didn't argue. She'd seen what rations looked like on the train. The next morning proved her right. A pot of thin soup, ladled into tin cups, bread that crumbled to dust. The women ate in silence, each breath fogging the cold air. Everywhere, fear seeped through the cracks. A camp that didn't make sense. The guards never shouted. They didn't strike anyone. They didn't bark orders like Elena had seen in other camps. But sometimes that made it worse, because uncertainty is its own form of terror. On the 6th day, a guard walked along the fence, humming a song that Elena recognized from her childhood. A folk tune, soft as falling snow. She gripped her cup so tightly, her knuckles burned. Why was he humming? Why here? One moment stayed with her. Snow falling quietly. A guard kneeling to adjust the boot of a young soldier. His movements gentle, almost paternal. It didn't match anything she'd been told, anything she'd seen on the front. But that day, something changed.
It happened on a morning so cold the air felt like broken glass. A guard approached their barracks carrying a wooden crate. Elena tensed. Everyone did. He set it down, then stepped back. Inside were books. Actual books. One woman gasped. Another stepped away as though it were a trap. Elena stared at the top volume, a poetry collection. Her breath caught. Her mother used to read the same poems aloud during summer storms. A guard gestured awkwardly, as though trying to explain without words. He pointed to the books, then to the women, then tapped his temple lightly. A gesture meaning, "For your mind." Elena whispered. Why would they give us this? She wanted to hate them, but couldn't. Moments that didn't fit the story. Small contradictions appeared everywhere. A bowl of soup thicker than before. A guard fixing the window latch to keep the wind out. Another guard placing 2 extra logs beside the stove, pretending no one noticed. But the strangest moment came during the evening roll call. A melody drifted from the far side of the camp. A violin. Pure, warm, impossible. The women exchanged stunned glances. Music didn't belong here. Not in a place built on fear. Not in a war that had taken so much. Elena stepped closer to the fence and saw a teenage soldier sitting under the eaves. The violin tucked under his chin. His fingers moved with hesitant grace. as though he was playing from memory instead of sheet music. The women huddled together, breath caught in their throats. A guard approached him. The women braced, expecting him to shout, to strike, to silence the fragile beauty. Instead, he sat beside the boy and listened. Something inside Elena cracked open. Something she didn't want to feel. Because if this was kindness, why did it hurt so much? An unwanted softening. Days passed, each one adding a tiny fracture to her assumptions. One afternoon, a guard handed Elena a scarf hand-knit, thick and warm. She stared at it as though it were a snake. But he simply nodded and stepped back. His eyes downcast. Almost apologetic. Mira whispered. "Don't trust them." Elena nodded. But the scarf warmed her neck all the same. At night, lying awake, she thought. If they are the enemy, why do they look at us like people? The world swirled with questions she wasn't ready to face. By the end of the second week, Elena was more confused than frightened. She didn't know the truth yet. It began with a cough. A deep, rattling sound from the far corner of the barracks. One of the older women, Anna, doubled over, her breath shallow. Elena's instincts from her nursing days surged forward. She wrapped a blanket around Anna's shoulders and pressed a hand to her forehead. Burning. But they had no medicine. The next morning, Elena approached the gate during rations, heart pounding. A guard looked up. The broad-shouldered one who never spoke. She swallowed hard. "Anna, sick," she said in halting German. "Need medicine. Please." He stared at her. Then at the barracks. Then back at her. He walked away. Elena's stomach dropped. Of course. She was foolish to hope. But that evening, he returned with a tin box. Bandages. Tablets. A small vial of cough tincture. He handed it to her without a word. Elena whispered. "Why are you doing this?" The guard hesitated. Then quietly murmured. "My sister." She was a nurse. That night, Elena cried silently behind the barracks. Tears she didn't want anyone to see. Tears she didn't know she still had. The diary moment. A week later, while sweeping the barracks, Elena found a small leather notebook tucked between the floorboards. Old. Frayed. Clearly not meant for her. She opened it. The handwriting inside was careful, almost delicate. "I hope the war ends soon. The women look so afraid. I don't know how to help them without breaking orders. Or breaking myself. If my mother saw me guarding prisoners, she'd cry, but if she saw how I treat them, maybe she'd understand. I wonder if kindness still counts during war." Elena closed the diary with trembling fingers. The words rewrote everything she thought she knew. But she didn't know the truth yet. The snowstorm. Because winter is hard. For everyone. Elena held the cup between her hands. The heat spread through her palms, up her arms, settling near her heart. And it wasn't the tea that warmed her. Something inside her whispered. If this is humanity, why does it hurt so deeply to accept it? The truth begins to surface. That night, Elena overheard something in the office, a half-open door. Officers speaking in low tones. "The war's almost over," one said. "We can't abandon them to the cold. Supplies must be shared. They're not enemies. Just people caught in the middle." Elena stepped back, breath shaking. Everything she believed, everything she feared, was unraveling. She was close to the truth. But not close enough. The day everything changed. It began with a horn sounding across the valley, a long, deep note that sent the women scrambling outside. The guards stood in formation near the gate. Faces solemn. Hands clasped behind their backs. The broad-shouldered guard stepped forward. His voice wavered, barely audible. "The war is over." The world went silent. The women stared. Some gasped. Some sobbed. Some collapsed to their knees. Elena felt her heartbeat in her throat. The guard continued. "You are free to go. We will escort you to the town. It is safe. No cheers. No celebration. Just relief. Heavy and overwhelming. The gate opens. For the second time, the gate creaked. But this time, the sound was different. Not threatening. Not cold. It was a beginning. A single beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, striking the snow like liquid gold. The women began walking, one by one, toward their freedom. But Elena stopped. She turned to the broad-shouldered guard. "Why?" she whispered. "Why were you kind to us?" He looked down, then met her gaze. "Because war takes enough. We should not take more from each other." She felt her throat tighten. He added softly, "My sister. She died in a field hospital. Nurses tried to save her. Women like you." Elena's breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "No. I am grateful. They stayed with her until the end. It is right that I stay with you until your safety." For a moment, the world felt suspended. Two strangers bound by loss, by fear, by unexpected humanity. The walk to town. The soldiers escorted the women along a narrow mountain path. No chains. No orders. Just quiet footsteps crunching in the snow. Elena noticed something she hadn't seen before. The soldiers looked just as tired as they did. Just as hungry. Just as human. Mira whispered, "I don't know how to feel." Elena didn't either. But as they walked, she felt something lift from her shoulders. A weight she'd carried for months. A weight built from assumptions, fear, and the hard shell of survival. By the time they reached the town, a small cluster of buildings with smoke rising from chimneys. Elena felt tears warming her cold cheeks. The townspeople rushed forward with blankets, bread, and open arms. The guard stepped back, watching, expression unreadable. Elena turned once more before stepping into the warmth of the inn. The broad-shouldered guard gave a small nod. A final, silent goodbye. The truth revealed. That evening, a local officer, now part of the new administration, explained the reality. Years later, Elena wrote in her memoir, her handwriting older. Softer, but steady. "I entered the camp believing I would never leave it alive. I left it believing something else entirely. People can choose how they treat one another." She closed with a line that would echo long after her words were forgotten. War took everything. But humanity gave it back.